It was like Christmas, Thanksgiving, and the 4th of July all rolled into one. Members of the Army's 24th Mechanized Infantry Division arrived home at Fort Stewart, Georgia early this morning. It was quite a welcome. ABC's Mark Potter tells us more.
The transport plane arrived shortly after midnight at the Hunter Army Airfield, bringing 100 members of the 24th Mechanized Infantry Division back to American soil. Nearby at Fort Stewart, Georgia, the soldiers' families waited anxiously for their arrival. Finally, after a 45-minute bus ride to Fort Stewart, the soldiers marched onto a parade field to join the loved ones they left behind 7 months ago. The Army's plans for an orderly reunion went right out the window. The families had waited too long for this day and had no time for formalities.
You miss me? I miss you too, brother.
My dog tags. I won't need those anymore.
He's a proud American. This is a proud American. What is that? Our hero.
Great. Very proud.
The service personnel arriving today will have the weekend off, but at 8 o'clock Monday morning they go back to work, preparing the base for the return of nearly 18,000 of their fellow soldiers. Those who have already arrived were moved by the show of support.
It was great. It's more than I expected, and I won't say it's more than I wanted, but it gets pretty close.
These reunions will be held for months now as service personnel return to their bases around the country. Mark Potter, ABC News, Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Some more U.S. POWs will be coming home. In a surprise announcement, Iraq says it has found 2 American military men in the city of Basra and says they will be turned over to the Red Cross today. Both men are said to be from the 7th Division. Iraq says 40 journalists who have been missing for several days will also be turned over to the Red Cross today. At least 9 Americans are in that group. There's another homecoming to tell you about, the one last night in Kuwait. Hundreds of Kuwaitis who were held prisoner by Iraq headed home, and they sang and they danced once they crossed the border. Many of the Kuwaitis say they were beaten and starved by the Iraqis during the weeks in captivity. Also in the Gulf this morning, Secretary of State Baker touched down in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's the first stop on Baker's tour of the region. He's trying to make the U.S. as influential in peace as it was in war. And on his way to the Gulf, Baker said that he would be willing to talk to Palestinians once he gets to Israel if they ask for a meeting, but so far they have not. Baker will also be talking about security arrangements in the Gulf to make sure Iraq behaves itself from now on. Something that could make Baker's work more complicated is the turmoil that's still going on in Iraq. We get more on that story from ABC's Barry Dunsmore.
The refugees streaming out of southern Iraq in recent days give testament to the chaos and anarchy which followed Iraq's crushing defeat. With many major Iraqi cities destroyed by Allied bombing, long simmering anger at Saddam Hussein's repression finally boiled over. Now, 17 different Iraqi opposition groups have come together to embrace the rebellion and its basic goal.
Just to turn Iraq to an ungovernable state, so that Saddam Hussein will not survive.
Southern Iraq is home to several places holy to the Shiite sect of Islam, which is the dominant sect in Iran. That's why the emergence of the opposition group known as the Supreme Council of the Islamic Revolution of Iraq is getting special attention. Inevitably, this group raises the specter of an Iran-like revolution sweeping Iraq. But most independent analysts caution against such simple conclusions.
I think that what's taken place in the south of Iraq has probably been more spontaneous than we think. I think that a number of groups have tried to hijack it, and this has led people to assume that Iran is pulling the strings behind it all. I think that that's probably a great exaggeration.
Actually, the main opposition may be in northern Iraq, where in 1988, Saddam Hussein used poison gas to kill 5,000 Iraqi Kurds. After decades of fighting for autonomy, the Kurds are a more serious force than the clerics.
The Kurds have suffered a lot. The Kurdish villages been destroyed, the Kurds deported, and now they think the day has come to take their revenge.
The Kurds are part of the umbrella Iraqi opposition group, which will meet this weekend in Beirut. They have some grandiose plans for that Beirut meeting, forming a government in exile, promising democracy and human rights for Iraq. But don't hold your breath. Saddam Hussein's army may have been defeated, but his secret police are as strong as ever. Barry Dunsmore, ABC News, London.
It is a different time. There is a different mood. Just ask Staff Sergeant James Crew of Wilmington, Delaware. Sergeant Crew was wounded in Vietnam, but when he came home from Vietnam, there was no celebration, no big welcome home. Sergeant Crew was wounded again during Operation Desert Storm. And yesterday at his children's school, Sergeant Crew heard a song composed just for him, and he learned how much things had changed between then and now. Sergeant Crew told the children, there are a lot of people not coming home who deserve this welcome more than I do.